What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Dell Tales. Man, you know what? These rankings came out yesterday, and I have to be honest with everybody, man. I'm really getting sick of this SEC bias nonsense that we have to see and deal with all the time. It's honestly getting old. NIL has definitely changed the way that we look at SEC bias now, and for some reason, we still have to deal with it week in and week out. For some reason, people just want to harp on this SEC bias as if playing football in the SEC is so much harder than playing everywhere else. The truth is, that's just not the case anymore. There was a time for that. Maybe they had an argument because a lot of these conferences are definitely top heavy. In the SEC, obviously, it's going to be Bama, Georgia. Now you bring in Texas, they're a competitor in there. Florida, not so much right now, but they'll figure that out over time and come back. In the Big Ten, obviously you got to have Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, Wisconsin when they wake back up. Iowa can always be dangerous depending on what they decide to do. And then now you got Oregon, and now you got to worry about USC. So there's a lot going on in the Big Ten as well, and it's going to be a very tough league to compete in and year out. Even the Big 12, a lot of people are kind of ignoring Colorado, but right now they run their own destiny. It's up to them to decide if they can make this playoff or not, and all they have to do is win out, and they're automatically in. They get an automatic bid. So there's so many things that are going on right now, and everything can change. Nothing is fully set in stone, but this rant today is definitely going to be about this SEC bias, so let's get right into it. All right, so the main part for this rant today is definitely going to start out with what we've seen on ESPN yesterday. A lot of these coaches are coming out and stating they don't actually want to play in the SEC championship because they have 2 losses right now. And obviously there's a 5-way tie inside the SEC right now. And that 5-way tie, those teams are Texas A&M has 2 losses, Georgia has 2 losses, Tennessee, Bama, and Ole Miss. And obviously, they've been eliminating each other kind of throughout the season. One is beating one, the other's beating who the other one lost to, and on and on and on. So it's just been a complete mess in the SEC right now. And I'm kind of enjoying the chaos because we already know that the College Football Playoff Committee is mainly dominated by SEC people. It's about 9 of them of the 13 members. So we get that. These SEC teams are going to get a lot of pass. They're not going to have to worry as much as in Ohio State, for example, if they lost 2 games. If Ohio State loses to Indiana this coming weekend, it's over. We're not even going to have the same conversation again. It's going to be over. They're not going to have a chance to play in the Big Ten championship. They won't get that chance to get that loss against Oregon back. It's over. They're not going to let them in. But Georgia, Bama, Ole Miss, all these other teams with 2 losses for some reason get the perfect pass, and they get to sit back there, potentially won't have to play in an SEC championship. And like I said, the big middle finger is just thrown out to everybody. How can any coach come out here and just say, hey, we don't really want to play in the SEC championship because we don't know if it's really good for our team? And then for everyone to hear this and just be perfectly okay with it. Matter of fact, what I'll do is I'm going to take a small excerpt of the ESPN video. Well, actually that's copyright issues, so I'm not going to do that. But what I'll do is I'll post a link in the video here, and I'll share the video after they came out with the CFP rankings yesterday and what these people were actually saying. And I was just highly annoyed with it, But the simple fact is we still are dealing with SEC bias, and those teams will always get the benefit of the doubt. For some reason, people think it's so much harder to play in the SEC when that's just not true anymore. The dominance that the SEC teams had at one point is no longer there. They no longer have 19 5-stars, starting games, and then you have all these other 5-stars who are gray shirting just so that they can sit and wait for their turn because the people in front of them are better. No, these guys have fixed the system by accident with NIL. These guys can go to any school at this point, especially if they're 5-star athletes who are highly marketable. They can go to almost any school nowadays. They can get NIL money, and they can play. So that dominance has dissipated, which is the reason why you see teams like Vanderbilt beating Bama. It happens. That dominance is gone. Now we are actually seeing coaches for what they can actually really do. Can you coach? That now turns into the new question. How well can you coach? Are you just hiding behind these 5-star athletes or what? That's the new question now. like I said, with the SEC bias, a lot of the coaches are coming out saying it's really tough to play in the SEC and all this. My question to those people, though, is where was this question of strength of schedule over the last 4 or 5 years when Georgia won these 3 national championships and stuff like that? Where was the question for that? Because Georgia had no schedule. And I'm actually going to go over a little bit of that, okay? So in 2019, Georgia had 2 tough games on the schedule, all right? They played Notre Dame in their 4th game, and then they lost to South Carolina in double overtime. By the way, they still remained ranked in the top 4 throughout all this. And then after their next big game, after all that, they lost to LSU in the SEC championship, which is fair. LSU, I mean, they had a dream team at that point. That was pretty much a professional team on a college field. But at that time, in 2019, Georgia had 14 5-star athletes on the team at that time. Fast forward to 2020, they had Auburn, Tennessee, Bama, Florida, who were all ranked. Now, at the end of the season, only Bama was ranked in any way, shape, or form that we even cared about. And they lost to Bama, which they only played. Actually, they played Bama in the season. They lost to them, and then they lost to Florida, who was ranked number 8 at that time and then was unranked at the end of the season. At that time, Georgia had 16 5-star athletes on the team. 2021, let's fast forward. Now, this is one of those years where they won a national championship, So everyone was not saying anything about Georgia's schedule. Once again, they're like, oh, it might be a weak schedule, but it's not Georgia's fault that they can't play themselves because they're that good. So although they had a weak schedule, and the main team that they played throughout that entire time was Bama in the SEC championship, which, by the way, they lost. They still ended up in the college football playoff. They went to beat Bama in the national championship, so they got that loss back. Fine. Okay. Once again, no complaints about, oh, hey, strength of schedule, who they played, all this stuff, the SEC being tough to play in. No complaints, no word of that. They had 19 5-star athletes on the team at that point. In 2022, they played Oregon and Tennessee, who was ranked number 1 at that time. Tennessee was no longer ranked at the end of the season on that one. I believe I got to go back and double check that for Tennessee. But the rest of the schedule, nothing to talk about. Absolutely nothing. Remember, these are the years that they didn't have to really play Alabama in the regular season. So once again, they win another national championship. And no one talks about how weak their schedule was or how tough it was to play in the SEC. Let me say that. They have 15 5-stars on the team at that point. 2023, now NIL is starting to have a little bit of an effect. Now it's starting to change a little bit. But, in 2023, their toughest game, once again, was Alabama in the SEC championships. And they lost that game. Again, no schedule. Alabama in the SEC championship, you lose. Still no complaints about how tough it is to play in the SEC. They had 4 5-star players. Okay. 2024. Now in this season. So the true effects of NIL are now taking place because not everyone is just going to schools like Georgia and sitting on the bench. So in 2024, their entire recruiting class, they only get 4 5-star players. Just 4. And there's a total of 14 of them on the team if you want to count from the previous year and all that stuff. However, now they're 8-2. They lost to Bama. They lost to Ole Miss. Now they're more just on par with the SEC competing with them. Not every SEC team has 14 5-stars on the team. That's not what I'm saying at all. But they're not all at Bama and they're not all at Georgia. Now the other teams have closed the talent gap. The talent gap has closed tremendously because now they can compete with NIL. And the same thing can be said for Bama, by the way. They don't have the same number of 5-stars either. That they used to have. That's not the case anymore. And even Jolly old St. Nick, Nick Saban, he came out and he said, man, these guys are now coming. They're asking for money and they're like demanding playtime. He retired from that. I respect it. Nick Saban is, I would say, the best college football coach we've probably ever seen. Probably one of the best we will ever see besides Urban Meyer. That's my personal opinion. Maybe some other people may have a different idea of that. Now that NIL has fixed all of this problem, we still have a 5-way tie in the SEC. By the way, all these teams except for A&M are ranked in the top 12. However, Tennessee, even though they are ranked number 11, they're not seeded at number 11. They would actually be the first team out, which is once again kind of weird because they beat Bama. And Bama beat Georgia. Ole Miss beat Georgia. Tennessee lost to Georgia. This is just a complete mess going on in the SEC right now. And that's why I keep saying, what if A&M beats Texas? That will be something interesting to see right there. That will change everything. So that will be the ultimate chaos, is if A&M can beat Texas and who ends up in the SEC championship. But again, for these coaches to come out and even have the nerve to say, I don't want to play in the SEC championship because if we pick up a third loss, we're definitely out. If that doesn't prove to you that there's a whole lot of bias going on around that, what more do you really need to see? Is there anything more that I can do to actually help you realize that there's a lot of bias going on over there? Come on, guys. I say all of this to try to explain that the talent gap in college football is now closing very quickly and very easily. And I actually appreciate that. It makes watching football more fun. It's no longer, oh, we're watching Georgia, they're going to beat the mess out of this team. No, Georgia almost lost to Kentucky this year. Texas almost lost to Vanderbilt. You know, it makes the game more fun. It gives all the players more chances to win. Now they're giving more teams a chance to join the playoffs and be national champions. I still don't think it's enough teams. I still think we need many more teams in the college football playoff. 12 is just not enough. This season is actually proving it. There are some teams that will be left out that I personally think deserve to be part of the conversation. And if they were in the playoffs, we might have a different story, you know. But I say all of this to say SEC bias needs to disappear. The talent gap has closed. It's no longer just SEC dominance, Big Ten dominance. All that is gone. Everybody has to come out week to week and play games. Everybody can be beat. Now we need to focus on who wins these games and how they win them. And that's it. Strength of schedule. What if we added a rule that said top 25 teams have to only play top 25 teams? Wouldn't that be nice? Cupcake games go away for a preseason so that we get to find out what's on the bench with these big schools. That would actually be kind of nice to witness, but we're still not getting anything like that. But I do hope that college football landscape definitely changes over time and that they do see that these changes can help these players perform better, give schools more chances to be national champions, and this SEC bias needs to disappear. It is no harder to play in the SEC than the Big Ten, or even the competition level being so equal in the Big 12 and stuff like that. Maybe SEC teams are better than teams in the Big 12, but I put up many Big Ten teams with many SEC teams all day, any day. It is what it is, and let me tell you something. These playoffs are going to tell us a lot because it looks like these SEC teams have to travel up into the north and play in the weather. And when that happens, listen, man, we play in the elements in the north. So when it's 10 degrees and snowing and the wind is blowing and you can't feel your fingers, the game of football changes. It's not in perfect weather, you know. So we'll definitely see what these guys are made of very soon. But thank you guys for listening, man. Have a good day. Peace out. Thank you very much for your time today, guys. Definitely like and subscribe, and we will have much more coming for you. Have a good one.